Dí of Ghadhra. My name is Louise Acheson. You're all very welcome to this afternoon session on soaps, provocatively titled The End of Soaps as We Know Them. I'm delighted we have a really excellent panel here today. I'm going to run through some introductions. We're going to show a couple of clips, then kind of get a bit of a discussion kicked off. There'll be some time for questions towards the end, and then we'll be all wrapped up for lunchtime. So we have, in kind of order as you see them, Martin McCardie, who's executive producer at River City, which is approaching its 24th year. Siobhán, Ghadhra, who's executive producer of Ros Naroon, which I think is 30 years old at this stage. And then joining us in a change to the schedule programme, we have Deborah Sathe from BBC Studios, who's creative director of drama production, so oversees the likes of Publicum, River City, Silent Witness, EastEnders, Father Brown, the works. So brilliant that you're all here with us.
Thank you.
We've a couple of clips sort of representing some of the work that the panellists here work on. So we're going to kind of show them up top and kind of ask you, as you maybe intro your clip or give us a bit of context, but just to tell us what continuing drama and soaps mean to you, particularly versus sort of shorter form content as well, or shorter form dramas. So Martin, I think you have a clip for us from River City, isn't that right?
Yeah, this is a clip of the end of the last part of the show that's been TX'd. So it's a kind of leading up to the cliffhanger that brings you into the next one that's on that we'd be watching.
Cliffhangers, that's what we like to hear. Can we show that first clip, please?
Everything's going to be okay.
Yeah. How will we know?
Come on. Yes. Let's get back inside, yeah?
Hey. I love you. Always have.
No, please!
Great, thank you. I don't think you have to have been watching River City all the time to appreciate the impact of that. That's the kind of iconic Lenny there. So, in terms of then, kind of as a way of making television, what does soaps mean to you?
When we talk about River City, we talk about it being the lives, loves, and crucially laughs of a working class community in Glasgow. And for me, it's that you can tell stories over a long period of time. So in a 6-part or 8-part drama, it's a very different way of telling stories. So that character, Lenny Murdoch, who has just jumped off the roof, we were inundated with people saying, if you kill Lenny Murdoch, we'll kill you. People really identify with the characters in a long-running drama and feel as if they know them. A lot of people will say to us, I don't really watch it, but I watch it with my gran. Or a taxi driver will say, I don't really watch it, but I watch it with my wife. Every now and again, she'll tell me what's happening. They know all the stories, and they certainly know who Lenny Murdoch and some of those characters are. So it's the fact that you get to know people as a community, and you've spent, 24 years is a long time. And some of the people in the show, Bob was there from the very first moment, so he's been in the show for the 24 years. I suppose that's. I think it's the continuity of it, and the fact that you can tell stories over a long period of time, and crucially, have a big sense of humour.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, maybe not so much.
Yeah.
It's represented through the rest of it. Siobhán, you have something from Ros Naroon for us, I believe.
Yes, yeah, so this is a clip of kind of dramatic moments as opposed to a scene. So
excellent. Can we go with that one, please?
Ani bheith ag taigó díran céir do bhuile nuair a dhéanamh sé amach cé ó hain.
Vinci Mahil! How could I make a COD, cash on delivery?
Listen to Bram with an owl, Kessler the Hackland. Bishin D? Jen Changwell, Valencia. I guess over the Tim Bravo and Buena Pasta.
Lovely. Lovely stuff. Little Conan O'Brien cameo there as well, which is great to see. So obviously with Ros na Rún, it's in the Irish language as well. So in terms of that, it's kind of similar question that I had for Martin. Like, what does soaps mean to you generally, and then specifically with Ros na Rún?
Yeah, it's interesting when we were kind of talking about this earlier. You know, I think a soap really gives an opportunity to reflect society. I think for us, Ros na Rún is set in a village in the west of Ireland, you know, so it has the strong rural element to it, but it really reflects everyday society, the changes that are happening. It's all about the characters who live there and a real sense of place, you know, so I feel it's got a really strong place in the Irish broadcasting landscape. It's in the Irish language, and there's 7 Irish-speaking areas in Ireland. We have characters from all those areas who show up in our village and everyday lives, but told very dramatically, obviously, and also addressing issues that arise for everyday people, so that they can, you know, our audience really resonates with our audience.
Fab, yeah. And Debs, then you represent quite a stable of projects. So I think you have a clip from Publicum.
I do.
Specifically. So maybe do you have something to set up with that, or we roll it? And
No, roll it, and then I'll
roll
talk
and
about
see.
it.
Yep. I'm going to let you off the leash.
Mae'r teimlad o gymuned, mae'n rhywbeth prin iawn. Ond ddim yn y pentre fach ni.
Is this a joke?
Popeth fi wedi neud, right? Fi wedi neud e mwyn ti. Fel bod ti ddim yn goffod wynebu i'r un dewisiadau.
Mewn iechyd a mewn salwch.
So much falling down.
I was
Yeah.
going to say, a lot of people falling off.
Whenever we get to show our clips, we always put the stunts on.
I believe is 50
years, yeah.
So astonishing run.
birthday.
And then, but you also represent EastEnders as well and some other flagship shows like that. So what do soaps mean to you in continuing dramas generally?
So I grew up on soap opera. My first job was in a soap called Silver Street, and then I moved on to EastEnders. I think soap sometimes goes under the radar. We are the people's theatre, either as a local show, Publicum, River City in your show, or as the nation's theatre in shows such as EastEnders and Casualty. It has a very specific sense of place. It pivots to how society changes. It's a very agile genre. But more than anything, it is, I think, a cultural touchstone for the nation. And we are able, through our storytelling, to stop society being frightened of change. I am obsessed with soap opera, and I'm most obsessed about the people we provide company for, the people who are isolated, the woman who has a relationship with our characters and have watched our characters grow and change and so on. And then the other side of it is that we're a talent factory. You come in, you get trained. Some stay for years and years and years, and some go on to the 6-part dramas that you've alluded to. But we are the industrial factories of the nation's TV and film industry.
Yeah, there's definitely a few things there I think we're going to pick up on and tease out around being a
We're ready.
pipeline and storytelling. First off, I'd like to talk about that question of storytelling and models of storytelling, because soaps and continuing dramas frequently engage with quite tough domestic and societal issues, but over longer periods of time, so they're able to kind of live and breathe them a little bit. I guess, do you have any specific examples of maybe stories that you feel have impacted audiences, like that kind of legendary water cooler moment? Do we still have them with soaps? How are they kind of touching audiences in terms of the tougher issues, so a bit told in a day-to-day manner, but at the same time maybe bringing things to the fore that haven't been discussed in the past? Because I think we spoke earlier on, a lot of your soaps have had a couple of firsts. So Siobhán, I know you had, was it the first same-sex kiss on Irish television?
Same-sex kiss on Irish television. And I think you can deal with issues like coercive control. We were talking about this earlier. Rural isolation is a storyline we did a few years ago. We did a storyline where one of our main characters, his wife was murdered, and got a great whodunit over a season and lots of red herrings. And like, your audience are so invested in those characters and those families, and you know, and I feel that they, given time to breathe, you can follow that storyline and they can see themselves within those stories and see how it affects the different people within that village, and they're drawing comparisons with their own life. So I think it gives you the opportunity to tell personal stories from the character's perspective in a way that really the audience can see themselves reflected in it.
We've been telling a coercive control same-sex story for the last 2 years, and it's been quite a slow burn, but also having massive soap moments in it, like the controlling person fell, hit his head, and genuinely lost his memory. So the whole thing kind of happened all over again when he was he going to turn out to be a nice guy this time or a bad guy? But we had massive, and we still have massive engagement from particularly female viewers who recognise the relationship and recognise relationships that they've been in. I don't think that would happen in a submarine drama or a police procedural drama. I think it's a very different take for people, because even though it's got heightened soap moments, it's got a reality in it about things that people are actually living at that time, rather than, say, crime, which we also have, or heightened big expensive dramas like, say, Vigil, which is great, but it's not the same as a soap in terms of it can't tell those same stories.
Because you really have people on the streets literally coming up to your actors, sort of looking to talk to them about it.
I remember when, do you remember when Helen stabbed Roy in The Archers? And loads of people donated money. We've had the same on EastEnders, where the audience are so invested in the victim and their survival that they send checks in, advice. They'll pull the actor in the street to say, here is my advice of how to get out of the relationship. The profundity of the relationship between the audience and the characters is extraordinary. I spent 9 years working in film. That relationship doesn't exist with an audience in the way that it does with soap opera. It is really quite extraordinary. That comfort, that familial feel is something that even TikTok or Instagram cover, they want that loyalty built up with their audience the way that soap opera does.
And I think you see it like we would, you know, there's a few Russ Roon fan pages and stuff on social media, and like if you go in there and look at the fans' discussions, they talk about these people as if they're people in their own lives. They're like, oh, did you see what Tig did last night? Oh, you know, he should, you know. So they really are engaged. Like they're all in, and you know, it's great for us when they're, you know, I meet people in my local shop because I live near where we film, and they're like, you know, last night, what happened? What's going to happen there? And you're like, oh, I couldn't tell you. You'll have to watch again, you know. So it's just that they really view them as part of their lives, you know.
And I think when we talk about those water cooler moments, they've gone online. They're still there. That water fountain moment happens on X, not Twitter. Over Christmas, we built up the storyline on EastEnders. I appreciate we're not talking about EastEnders here, but just to show how it's not dead, we had Michelle Collins, Cindy Beale's character, hit over the head with a snowplow. Amazing. And then we had the lesbian wedding. Across a month, we had 284 million digital impressions talking about EastEnders. So that isn't dead. That is very much alive. It's just who are the people that are calling our genre dead, because they are not paying attention to the 284 million digital impressions that EastEnders got over Christmas. And I think that is something that is uncomfortable to raise, but we are primarily a working class. Workers are working class, the people that work on the show are working class, and our audiences in the main are working class. And so that's where I wonder whether it's easy to it's easier to dismiss us.
Well, the fact that it's sort of so day-to-day and regular rather than massive big spikes in the same way, although that number of hits is quite, and as a figure on its own, it's quite high, but I think you say it's streets ahead of everyone else as well. It's not just sort of in isolation, a large figure.
Soap opera is a huge driver in terms of audience behaviour.
But I think in the context of Russ and Roon, more so than working class, we are definitely a rural show, I guess, versus an urban, you know, so we're set in a village in the west of Ireland. A lot of any other long-running dramas in Ireland are set city centre. A lot of TV dramas that are shot in Ireland would be kind of city based or certainly urban. So I think it's always interesting to me. Obviously, we're in the Irish language, so 284 million would be the stuff of absolute dreams for us. But we do, but we well, you never know. But we do have. It's always interesting to me that along with our core, very loyal Irish-speaking audience, we have a huge English-speaking audience as well who watch with subtitles, and they're mainly rural. Last September, we opened up for Culture Night. We opened up the studios for the first time ever, and people travelled from all over the country, emotional, and the actors were amazing, and photo ops and selfies, and it was just really heartwarming night, because these were ordinary people. They travelled from every corner of Ireland to come and see, so that was just amazing for us to witness, to see how invested our audience were.
Yeah, and it's that continuity clearly that allows for that and builds it up, because you're sort of a weekly part of people's lives. I mean, another aspect of, continuing drama, the clue is in the name, is not just the storytelling and the audiences, but also the crew and the people who work on them, the writers, directors, and all the various crews from top to bottom. Can we talk a little bit about how, I guess, what soaps and continuing drama offer to as a talent pipeline, kind of aside from maybe stark audience figures as the stories you tell, but just purely as a means to train and offer progression opportunities, and just generally kind of offer that continuity of work to the workforce. So Martin, can you speak to that for Scotland?
Yeah, we were fortunate that we had a training academy up until the news of the show being decommissioned, so that won't continue. But we are still continuing to train people on the show, which we've done for many, many years. An example would be, we've got a new young director who, the amount of time we've had to take for the training is, for one block she shadowed, then a second block she got to shadow again but do some scenes. A third block she got to do one episode, and in this next block she's going to do a block of 4 episodes. So that's 2 years of training for her, really, in terms of our show. And that's what the advantage of having a long-running drama for us is that we could spend the time with people, we could take risks with them, we could give them opportunities, and many of them move on to other things. I think the crucial part about training on River City is that if you go to any drama production in Scotland, there are loads of people who've worked and trained on River City and have moved on to higher end dramas. So the training wasn't just for us. I used to let Debs was saying this is for BBC Studios for all their shows, and I was saying it's a bigger thing, it's for Scotland. We have to train people, give them opportunities, bring them through, let them find a pipeline to work in other shows. It wasn't that we tried to train them and keep them. We were trying to train them and give them opportunities, because those opportunities are rare in Scotland. And I think the training that we provided will be missed massively in Scotland, because you can't do that on an 8-part or 6-part drama. You just can't do it. And I think all of the people that have trained on our shows, and there are so many of them, like for example, writer-wise, we were asked by BBC Scotland to up the ratio of female writers. The ratio was 80% male, 20% female. That was 5 years ago. It's now 50-50, but that's because we trained all those women writers. We trained all these women directors to make that 50-50, and my concern would be what happens to them now. We were asked to do it, and we provided that. It would be good to see that replicated elsewhere in the industry, and probably my concern is whose responsibility is that. We took the responsibility because we believed it's the right thing to do. I hope someone else does that when River City's no longer there.
And we'll definitely delve a bit more into that elephant in the room on River City and the decommissioning of soaps.
And the same applies with us. We would be seen as a training ground. Every year we have opportunities for graduates or people who are new into the industry. And similarly to Martin, like for writers, we're currently running an initiative at the moment, which is a 12-month writer training initiative specifically for long-running drama. And we got support from Commission Imán and the National Talent Academies through Screen Ireland. And TG Carr obviously are very supportive always for us when we're looking at this. But like, we've 12 writers who are being mentored for a 12-month period, in the hope that 2 or 3 will be able to produce scripts or work in our writing team. That's a challenge we would have, a linguistic challenge a lot of the time.
And ask it to delve into that bit as well,
So it can be challenging for us to find people to write for us, and it's that old chicken and egg. It's back to sustainability of employment. Can you offer them enough work along with, or can they manage to write scripts along with have a day job? Some of our writers still do a few scripts in a year, but actually have day jobs as well. So that can be tricky. Obviously, they need to have a certain level of expertise in their craft in order to work and write full time. So you're constantly balancing that, and we're always addressing that, particularly writers, directors. But like our series producer at the moment, she started as a trainee camera person over 20 years ago in Russellroon, went into lighting, became a camera operator, worked in scripting for a while, then trained as a director with us, went off and worked at other shows, and now she's back at home, which is a factor as well. You know, some of our HODs have been 30 years or close to 30 years with the show, and it suits them. If Russellroon wasn't there from a sustainability perspective, they would have to seek work somewhere else in the country, you know. So that's an important factor as well for us, I think.
Yeah, and I think it's a challenge across the sector, which we'll talk about a bit as well. Some of these challenges aren't specific to soaps, but they do offer a fairly unique kind of way to mitigate against that somewhat in terms of the offer. And then Deb, you're across so many different shows. You must have so many pipelines and talent.
Yeah,
the whole time.
I have targets. I get set targets by my boss, Si Bennett, and the soaps are how I hit my targets. From Publicum, we had Am Famol, we did 2 series of a Welsh language dark dramedy. We have another show coming out of Pobl as well, helmed by Anne Harrod Ellen, who's one of our writers there. It's a thriller back-to-back called The Night They Vanished. We're working on another production with them as a result of all our relationships from there. And then for River City, we have a show in development called The Glasgow Boys with Johnny McKnight, one of Martin's lead writers, and one of the protégés from River City who then came on to Holby, Ciara Conway, has a show in development with BBC Scotland called The Couple at Number 9. None of those shows would exist if it wasn't for the soaps. They are absolutely talent farms. And I think particularly for getting that talent who might not have come into the industry if we only made, 6-parters, they wouldn't have been given the opportunity, but more importantly, they couldn't afford to stay in the industry because they need to be paid in a constant way. And sometimes that more irregular filming doesn't allow that. And so in Publicum, in River City, we are able to develop writers, sparks, camera ops, everything, and then take that talent with us to the 6-parters that we're going to deliver as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the kind of, I think, there's obviously in recent years been a number of kind of high-profile soaps decommissioned, Holby City, Doctors. Martin, we were aware that kind of by autumn of next year...
I'm beginning to think it's me, Martin, by the way.
By autumn of next year, River City then will be decommissioned, and you kind of know it's coming, and it's generated a lot of discussion and debate. But are you already feeling any impact from that announcement in terms of people's kind of concerns or their future, particularly for kind of working class crew, working class actors as well in Glasgow?
Yeah, I mean, it was a difficult decision for BBC Scotland to make. I don't think for a second it was easy for anybody. And the commissioners actually came down and made the announcement themselves, which I think was, I use the word traumatic, but it was for the people who've been there for a very long time and see the end of something they care about deeply and have given an awful lot to. So there's an example would be one director on the show started on River City as a trainee camera person, then trainee B camera operator, trainee A camera operator, and he was directing short films, went to work with Spike Lee in America and came back and asked for a chance to direct on River City. So that's we could give him that opportunity. We trained him. He became a director on River City. He also now directs on Coronation Street. And in 2023, when River City won the RTS award for Best Drama, he was the director of that episode. And the following morning, he was away working in a bottling plant because it was in between when we were shooting. So the reality for him is he doesn't come from a working class background. He's in a working class background. And for him, he's going to have to give up that job. He can't do it. He's got a family. So he's now an example of someone who has been given that opportunity in River City and has been able to make a living that now won't be able to make a living. And he's not someone who will be considered for higher end dramas. Talented as he is, he's a fantastic director. He's not done any higher end dramas. So there's no chance of him getting Shetland or Vigil or any of those. So for him, it's now, what do I do? how can I stay in the industry? And that doesn't just happen for that person. There's many people across it. There's script editors that have been trained. Where do they go? It leaves a massive gap. And understand that the other shows that are coming, I hope they're all great and I hope they're very successful, but they are different from what River City is. And when we're compared to those shows, it's very difficult because we're not Vigil, we're not Shetland, we're not any of those things. And viewing figures and purpose of the show compared to them, they're very different things. I think when River City goes, my own opinion is the function it serves in the industry will be missed. But we won't know that for the next couple of years. But I think that's what will happen. Unless that is filled with something else, there is a massive gap, in my opinion, that will be left.
Well, there's a gap for kind of audiences and the content they consume, but also, for the crew. And you touched on something there that we had discussed a little bit, which is how people who work on soaps are perceived, and maybe an inherent kind of, if not quite snobbery, but like an assumption on quality and value, which I don't think any of you agree kind of is borne out by the reality of it. But it seems, because we're kind of, this panel is looking about like, are soaps, is it the end of soaps as we know them? So that implies a question of evolution, like are they changing? But you think after kind of years and years and years that there'd be maybe a higher respect level in some ways. But how do you find that in terms of kind of the wider sector's perception of soaps?
For me, it's about the quality of actors on soap operas, at the speed at which they have to film. We have 2 units on River City, we've got 2 units on Pobble, meaning that an actor will be jumping between those 2 units. So on the one hand, they can be filming 1 week where their husband's died, and so they are making sure that they're doing all that trauma acting. And then on the other unit, it's just before their husband died, and they can be doing both those things in the same day. On EastEnders, we can have 4 units working. And the actors are so good that in that first take, they can drive all that emotion. I've worked in film. Sometimes it will take the morning for an actor to arrive at that emotional state. And I think that is so overlooked. Phil Mitchell has just recently won an award last Saturday in the Soap Awards. He should win a BAFTA, not a soap award. It was extraordinary what he did. And I would say the same about Lenny Murdoch's suicide that you witnessed. The lead up to that jumping is extraordinary. His psychosis is extraordinary. I think we have some of the finest actors this country has to offer. But there is an elitism in the perception of their talent, or they're perceived as limited because they work in soap opera, when actually they are everything but.
Yeah, they probably do tend to get pigeonholed a bit. Like, we're unique in that we shoot 6 months of the year, so our cast and crew don't have work all year round, so we shoot from August till February. And the reality is they have to pick up other work, and that's not always acting work for our cast. You can find them doing all kinds of other jobs because they have to pay the bills as well. And I do sometimes feel maybe they're overlooked on other projects, some of them, because they're so well recognised as their soap character. But like, our crew would be, I suppose our shooting schedule allows them to pick up if there was other drama or films shooting in the kind of summer months that they could take work there. But it's difficult to retain people. The people we have managed to retain kind of would be our HODs or the seconds in departments, and it's probably a lifestyle thing for them. They're not interested in relocating to the East Coast, which is really where the majority of production work happens in Ireland. There's an ongoing issue there about regional development, or discussion rather than an issue, I suppose, about trying to develop the regions and for more stuff to shoot in the regions. Like, we would be the single biggest production outside of the Dublin area that shoots in Ireland, and a big employer, a big driver of the economy. We are literally situated in a small village 10 miles outside Galway City. But I do think sometimes there is this perception of, all they've done is Ross and Roon. And when this could be producers come to me saying, can you recommend somebody for a gig, and I'm going, yeah, that's because it's local to them and they have bills to pay. And that is the choice they've made personally, is to work there for 20 years. But that doesn't take away from how good they are at their job, But I think that is something that needs to be kind of looked at a bit.
Yeah. It was always a favourite kind of check or game of mine. If you're looking at anyone on IMDb as to how many episodes of Doctors that they done, any British actor ever.
Yeah.
And because I think there's a twofold thing. You can either move on to quote unquote greater things, but I think we're
Yeah.
not always great. But there's real value in having not moving on from soaps and having that be your career in and of itself.
And then that profundity comes back, doesn't it? That relationship you have with the audience, because they have watched you for 50 years. There was Megan in the Pobble clip. She's been in the show since day one. So there is an audience in Wales who have watched her for 50 years. That's extraordinary.
Yeah.
What other genre would have that? We did Talking Heads at Elstree when COVID happened and no one was shooting anything for the first time. The cameras came off on the soaps. And Nick Heitner, the theatre director, wanted to do Talking Heads and brought all his HODs from Batman film and Little Women and etc. And they worked with our crews. And all the HODs said they had never worked with such a efficient, disciplined and talented crew. And I would say that we feel that about... Yeah. We shoot from the crack of dawn till the sun sets, and sometimes 6 days a week, 12 hours a day. And those crews, there's nothing they can't do.
On time, on budget.
On time, on budget, and solution finders.
And in all seriousness, at a lower budget level than any six-part drama series, you know, the budget for continuing drama, it's a certain production model that works really well. But like what people can achieve with the money that they have, and we were having this conversation the last day, you know, to pull off stunts like that, or falling off a roof, or a big fire, or, you know, those dramatic moments within, you know, strict constraints, I guess. It's amazing what they're able to pull off, you know?
Yeah, for sure. And at the Prestige drama panel yesterday, there was essentially a call for more money from broadcasters.
Look at the titles: Prestige drama, and then End of Soaps, as we know.
But I assume there'd be a similar call, because that's, you mentioned audience depths, and I will, in terms of this audience too, if anyone has any questions, I can't quite see, but feel free to maybe raise a hand so I have an idea if there's a couple coming, otherwise we'll keep going here. But because as we approach the end, I guess I'm interested to know what you feel the challenges are for finding an audience, because the entire media landscape is changing. As I mentioned earlier on, it's not just soaps that are struggling with budgets and with finding an audience, but there seems to be real conflicting stories, like the River City figures may have dropped, but EastEnders are rising. But is that reflective of the investment of the broadcasters and what have you? And then you mentioned the digital impressions earlier on, so it's clearly finding ways to maybe hit an audience outside of just linear programming. So in generally speaking, as a kind of final rallying call, so to speak, what do you feel might be the challenges or opportunities for soaps to continue to find an audience?
Like, we're in a unique position in that, obviously, Asgailge, it's a minority language, so we are limited as to how much we can grow our audience realistically. I think the fact that we're now broadcasting on the TG Ghadhra player is huge for us, and Russell Room does really well. People tend to catch up online, and so that's been great for us, because it just means more people. And it's always interesting to me then, and again, it's a linguistic point, people who are trying to learn the language also turn to Russell Room often as a tool in which to do that. So we sometimes get data of where the player is being used. You know, I've heard of watch parties in Sydney, young Irish people who are in Sydney.
Amazing.
They sit down and watch the omnibus on the player, a bit of nostalgia, thinking of home, whatever, Irish speakers or people with a bit of Irish. So, you know, we have a certain worldwide small audience there that's growing, which is a nice thing. Again, you know, I can't say it's 284 million, but for us, it's really nice to see that we're reaching out there, and that people are appreciating the work that we're doing, I guess.
And are you seeing any kind of overlap with sort of the kneecap effect as well, in terms of that interest in Irish, or is this?
I think there's a huge positivity, which is, well, as a native Irish speaker, obviously I think that's a wonderful thing. You know, I think globally, I think particularly in the UK, there seems to be a kind of a wave that we're all riding on, and we will definitely jump on that wave with anybody who cares to take it, you know. Another thing I think is, like, we would tend to have a slightly older skewed audience, which I think is probably a lot of long-running dramas. About 2011, way before its time, Russell Room did some online shorts aimed at a teenage audience, which were the teenage characters from Russell Room in the world of Russell Room, but it was only broadcast online. I mean, I'd say most Irish speakers in Ireland didn't even have broadband at the time, quite frankly. I couldn't imagine. So it was Morny Hool God rest her, who was the person who set up Russell Room originally, that was her kind of brainwave, and I think something like that into the future. I think we need to look a bit more at that younger audience. You introduce younger characters. We were talking about this earlier. Like, your audience are really invested in your older, long-standing characters, so you have to be really careful when you bring in new people, because
audience hate
they hate them when they come in first. So you have to kind of bring them in gently and try and find a bit of love for them before you give them big storylines. Or so that's something. I think I was saying this earlier when we were chatting. Like, I think people would not realize the amount of work that goes in the story scripting stage of I think people feel sometimes it's paint by numbers, but actually the amount of thought and research and creativity that the story team and the writing team bring to the table, to come up with storylines that you can shoot within the parameters that you have, be that budget or time or talent or whatever, so what they actually manage to achieve is amazing.
Mm-hmm. And so, Deb's, that kind of question of reaching audiences and the opportunities and challenges then, in terms of the slate of projects that sit under you, are you experimenting with different ways of reaching audiences?
Yeah, definitely. We've got, we're always innovating. Like, soap has never stayed still, has it? Like, the show that you watch now is not the show that you watched 23 years ago when River City started, or 50 years ago when Pobble started. It evolves, it responds to societal change. We carefully take the hand of the audience to introduce them to things that they might be reading in the media and find frightening. We are a cultural touchstone, I think, to reflect back what is happening in the world today. And the joy, particularly of River City and Pobble, is you're able to do that locally as well. I think soap opera is an infrastructure that industry needs, but I think sometimes we don't realise how profound it is to society and its audience. And so our job, and my work wife and director of productions, Siobhán, is in the audience as well, is to inspire our teams to take risks. Go out there, try that thing on TikTok, bring in that character. Yeah, it's going to be uncomfortable, but my goodness, look what we're going to get back as a result of that. If we don't take risks, if we don't innovate, then we deserve to die. So soap is about constantly evolving in order to survive and grow. And I think all of our shows can evidence growth in different areas, whether it's that they've grown their younger audience, or they've grown their middle class audience, or they've grown their working class audience. We are all able to evolve and provide evidence of success.
Mm-hmm. Our time has flown in, so before I kind of look for a final word from Martin, are there any questions from the audience at all? I'm a little bit blinded. Yeah. But if I don't have any hands up, I'm wondering.
Just one point, sorry,
sure,
I wanted to jump in there. I think a thing that soap, and certainly from a Russell Room perspective, is humour within that genre. I think our audience love if you meet anybody who's going to chat to you about a storyline, they will always bring in, God, it was hilarious the last time when XYZ happened. So I think soap allows you to do that. It's, obviously you have your heavier stories and your mysteries or your dramatic stories, but I think our audience in particular loves humour. We have this on-running gag I was saying earlier about different dialects and how our local kind of chief baddie doesn't like people from Donegal or the way they speak Irish and stuff. So I think that's a bit of comic relief that an audience really appreciates, and you have the room to do that within a soap structure that you mightn't have in other drama series.
Mm-hmm. And I know you've played around with Celtic Rangers kind of on screen, off screen, toying with your actors.
Well, we've got an actor who's been there since day one, Stephen Purdon, who plays Bob. In the show, he plays a big Celtic fan. In real life, he's a well-known Rangers fan. So what we did was, with Angus, his buddy in the show, he's a Celtic fan, so we made him a Rangers fan and just switched it around to have a bit of fun with both of them. But if you think of the sort of zeitgeist of River City, I'll need to use a bad word to say this, but Jordan Young, who plays Lenny Murdoch's son in the show, was at a Rangers match. He's a Rangers fan, and the crowd started singing "Shite Lenny Murdoch," just a shite Lenny Murdoch. So that's the zeitgeist that the football crowd would understand, because they have, even though they would probably say they don't watch the show, they know who everybody is in the show. Some
real-time data audience analytics right there. Your local football match. Yeah. And I suppose to kind of finish off, you obviously have a year to go. Any kind of sensational stories in your back pocket where you've just gone to hell with this, or we're going to go out with a bang?
No, I think
Can you
what
tell us?
we are all. I mean, the thing is, once the decision's been made and you accept the decision's been made, what everybody on that show wants to do is make it the best series of it that we can. So I think the story, in terms of what the investment is from the writers on the show and the story people, we have got some really big storylines, I think, and we do want to go out with a bang. We want to see some familiar faces from the past. We want to look at bringing in some people that maybe wouldn't have been in River City before but have expressed an interest and been in it now. We're inundated with crew wanting to come back to the show to do it before it finishes, because that's where they started. We're inundated with writers wanting to come back who've gone on to higher end dramas. So there's a real fondness for it. I mean, in my own case, I started writing for the show in 2005. I wrote about 40 or 50 episodes. I was in the show as an actor for a series, left to get a loaf and never returned. That was basically because I had to choose between writing and acting at that time. Eventually became a producer, eventually became exec producer, and that show has been very good for me living and working in Scotland, which is what I wanted to do. But prior to that, I had to go around elsewhere a lot of the time, and when my kids were small, I really didn't like it. So the show has been fantastic for me and many other people to stay in the country that they want to live in and work in. I just hope that that footprint doesn't disappear with the show, and that the opportunity is there for younger people than me to live and work where they want to.
Yeah, hear. I mean, I think it's an adage of journalism was when there's a question mark in the headline, the answer is no. So the end of soaps as we know them, I think,
Thank you,
no,
Louise.
certainly not extinct, evolving maybe.
Yeah, growing.
But I think there's plenty of life in them yet, and even for those whose time has come to an end, its legacy is really, really prominent, and I think you've done a great job of letting us know the impact it's had and will continue to have, hopefully. So we've sort of hit lunchtime now, I think, so I hope you'll join me in thanking Deb, Siobhán and Martin for their time here today. And I think that's it. We've just the rest of the festival. Enjoy. We'll see you around. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Louise.